If you ran Claude's Fable model 40 hours a week for a whole year, the equivalent salary would be about $1.1 million. So why is it still doing your basic web searches? That's the mistake most people are making. They hand Fable one big task and it does the whole thing end to end, research and grunt work included. Then you're out of usage by Monday afternoon and the limits themselves are getting cut, not raised. The fix to this madness is treating Fable like a manager instead of a worker. It breaks the job up, briefs cheaper models like Sonnet and Opus for the easier parts, and saves itself for the decisions and the orchestration. My co-host Gael runs 8 simultaneous threads inside Claude Code this way, and he gets weeks worth of work done in just 6 hours. So in today's episode, we're going to unpack how to set all of this up and get a lot more mileage out of your Fable usage. So welcome back, Gael. It's been 4 or 5 weeks since our last weekly episode.
It's a short sabbatical, okay? Just
Yeah.
it's been fine. It's been busy, to be honest. A lot of stuff's happened. New models, new everything, drama, models banned, all that. We're not gonna catch up on all of that. I expect a lot of people know all of that stuff, but I think the way I use AI today is probably quite different from how I used it last time we talked.
And this all kind of stemmed from the Fable, which was a version of this Mythos model, which we talked about before. It's really good, but you don't get very much of it anymore. But at least we still get it because it was supposed to be going away. But as of Sunday, it's now permanent, but with much, much reduced limits. And that's causing a little bit of a challenge. This is maybe the first time that we've really come up against an issue with AI where we just can't use it as much as we'd want to, right?
It's gonna get worse, right? It's like, that Anthropic is actually running plus 50% limits, weekly limits on all plans right now. It was supposed to end like 2 days ago as of today, but they extended it by a month just because competition. But they are due to cut the limits at some point by 33% for the weekly compared to now.
And I think this is like a broader thing. Like the name of the game in AI is going to be efficiency over the next year. And most people just aren't set up from that. We're kind of drunk on free credits at the moment.
Which is why people run out of like weekly usage on Fable in like a day or something. I managed to kind of like juice it quite a bit. I mix it with Codex. Like I use both Claude Code and Codex. I mean, ChatGPT now has been renamed since last time we talked. But
we'll cover that later as well, by the way.
But it's like if you are careful and if you use a lot of orchestration, then you can get a lot out of it and run it most of the week, basically.
So what do you mean by orchestration? That's when you use a clever model to like delegate to not so clever model when you need to?
Kind of. Think about it. It's like, let's say you have a task. Let's say you have a task of, I'm going to take an example that a lot of the audience knows is that you want to write a blog post, let's say. So there's multiple steps, right? There will be, researching, there will be planning, writing the outline, writing, editing, publishing, let's say, like all these steps, right? So the task is put an article on my site. But actually, if you break it down, there's a lot of subtasks. And you could argue, for example, that the research is just a bunch of web searches. Potentially, you connect to also YouTube through Amplify or something. But the idea is like you retrieve a bunch of data and you extract what's interesting, right? We don't need Fable for that. It's like Sonnet is plenty for that and can do that work, right? Arguably the writing, like let's say let's go to the next step, which would be, let's say, writing the outline. The outline requires a little bit more thinking and understanding of like who is the target audience and maybe some SEO stuff, whatever, etc. So it's more than just reading an article and extracting data. Like you need a model that's a bit smarter. So maybe Opus is good for that, right? I probably don't need Fable still, but Opus is probably a good model for that. Then the writing, if the outline is very good, then
the writing is easy.
Yeah, the writing is not very difficult, right? Therefore, you can go back to Sonnet probably for writing. And then let's say editing requires maybe a bit of a more critical mind and going back to like, what are we trying to achieve here, etc. So it's a little bit more complicated. Again, probably Opus is a good model for that, right? And so what you can do in terms of orchestrating is you can tell Fable, hey, I want an article. And Fable can act as like the manager, like editor-in-chief, like everything that just writes the task for the lesser models. And what that means is the tasks are going to be briefed very well by Fable. They're going to be written very well because the model is the smartest that you can get. And then therefore the lesser models are actually going to outperform you prompting them. And at the same time, you're not eating your Fable credits, which are only 50% of your weekly limits. And also in general, you're just using less tokens because Sonnet is 4 times cheaper than Fable and Opus is twice cheaper than Fable. And then if you adjust also reasoning effort on all these tasks, then you can be very granular and get a lot more done while still talking to Fable as your general manager.
So you're having to be a bit more precise about how you want the task to be executed so that you can get the efficiencies there. But I think using the humans as a analogy is quite a good one. It's like if you have a big content team, you're a multinational publisher or something, you don't go to your vice president of content or director, whoever, and like ask them to go do all the low level research and scraping and things like that. They have a team and they'll delegate down. And essentially what we're doing is the same here, because like we don't want our most expensive people, or in this case AI models, doing work that someone on $20 an hour or something can do.
Someone calculated that if you were running Fable 40 hours a week for a year, which would equate to a salary, the salary would be $1.1 million or something. So you need to kind of like treat it with a little bit of deference and give it your most important task. It doesn't mean you can't use it, but like I don't want you to do every task. So most people just write it in the thread and they're like, boom, I wrote a blog post, I blew through 50% of my weekly limits. I can probably write one and use 10% or 7% or something like that using a process like this. And at the same time, I still get most of the value. It's not as good as if Fable did everything. Like I lose a little bit, but the loss is fairly acceptable given the much lower usage in terms of tokens.
Yeah. And again, this all does come back to cost. I think we're kind of drunk on free credits and subscription subsidized credits at the moment. That, like, honestly, for a lot of people, it hasn't made sense to even bother to delegate it because they're not even touching their weekly limits. But like most people are legitimately having issues with that now, with Fable specifically, because the limits are so low compared to other models in general. And
I max out two $200 accounts now, basically. Like I mean, one OpenAI, one Anthropic, but yeah, it's like my AI spending used to be 100, sometimes 200, and now I'm at like 400. I'm considering a third account actually. So yeah, it's something that it's great. I get a lot done, a lot more, but you have to be careful.
So we know that we want to delegate from different models. How does one actually go about setting that up so it's like it happens automatically, it's low friction?
I mean, at the lowest level is just subagents, right? So you've probably seen your Claude Code or your Codex or ChatGPT now use subagents. And so that means it's like, oh, I'm going to send subagent. It's just about being more explicit about it and kind of like nudging the model to kind of like do more of the job of the planner and manager, and then tell it which models to use and which effort levels for which types of tasks. So for example,
is that something we set in our claude.md or agents.md file globally, or?
You could do that, but I've made skills basically to do that. So it's like I have like a skill called delegate, and then inside that skill, there's a reference file that is called routing.md, and there's a table. And then it's like I've taught my Claude to use both Claude models and Codex models, actually. So it uses the terminal to call Codex when it wants, and it uses Claude models when it makes sense as well. And the idea is like, I'm like, okay, well, if you need to just do some basic web research, maybe Sonnet in low is fine. If you need to do something that requires, some decision making and editorial, maybe like Opus in medium or high or X high for the most difficult things is probably a good idea. If you're stuck, maybe you can call a Fable subagent to unstuck you. If you want to write code, Codex is excellent right now, it's very cheap. So use Codex. And then it's like I have like basically this table with like a bunch of models, an example of tasks that I would give them. And then the model just, when I tell it, hey, you're a delegate or you don't do the work, then it will just go read that and it will just call the right subagents for the right tasks and make calls basically. And so that's what I've built for myself, both on ChatGPT and Claude. So they're a bit different because the native models are a bit different. And then you just change that table if you want to change the way things change or a new model comes out or whatever. Now, just going back to CloudMD, my CloudMD there says, hey, if this is a small task, just walk normally. But if this is a big task, call the delegate skill. And the delegate skill has everything.
And this is something, if you're an Authority Hacker AI Accelerator member, it's available now in our skills section in the plugin marketplace. So you can get that, and you kind of update that pretty regularly with like what's the best routing. Is it mostly the routing table that changes then?
Yeah, mostly. And so like now I have all the new GPT models. So like it uses like Luna, Terra, Sol, and then we have Fable in there, and then hopefully Opus 5 comes out this week or next week. and then I'll update for that. But yeah, it's pretty easy. Like we have the marketplace, so I can push updates, and people they just press the button, and it routes to the new models basically.
And one other thing about subagents, which is also I think worth talking about, is this idea of like it's not just about being more efficient, but you can use it to go faster, right?
Yes.
So if you want a good example, let's say you're doing some personalization for some outreach. If you have 100 contacts to go through and research and write, it's going to go through them one by one by one. But you could theoretically spawn dozens of subagents to.
Bad example, and I'll explain
why.
First of all, you need to understand the cost of subagents. Like to write a subagent, it means your main smarter model, usually you run in like Opus X High or Fable or something, needs to write the prompt for that subagent. So if you spawn 100 subagents, you're spending a lot of output tokens to do that. Then your subagent starts with no context. And what that means is the subagent has the context of the prompt, but usually the prompt written by Fable will link to a bunch of files or tell it, hey, you go read that, you go do that, etc. That means each subagent is going to start spending tokens. So for example, there will be a file that explains how to personalize, right? That file, if you spawn 100 subagents, is going to be read 100 times. So you're going to spend 100 times the input tokens for that. So you're better off sometimes putting things in line. It's a little bit slower, but in terms of efficiency, it's a lot cheaper because you load the file once and then it can do like 100. So the way it's going to work mostly is like it will send a subagent to, let's say, go and collect contacts maybe different ways. So let's say you have 3 ways you collect contacts. You have one that like scrapes, I don't know, like Craigslist. I don't know, I'm making stuff up. You have one that uses Apollo, and you have one that uses API for something else, right? So you have 3 methods. That it makes sense to spawn 3 subagents to go do that at the same time. And then essentially the main model then just puts it all back together. But it does not make sense for the same task to spawn 100 subagents if you are careful with tokens. If you don't give a shit, sure.
Yeah, there's kind of a balancing issue here. It's like you can, go faster, but it's going to be, well, not more expensive if you're not hitting your limits. It's the same fixed cost, but like it's more expensive in terms of token usage at least.
Yeah, and it's like it will saturate your main model as well because it needs to write so many prompts. So it's like the main model as well. The point of the orchestrator is that because it doesn't do the dirty work, its context window stays pretty small because it just gets the output from the subagents. And therefore, it's able to make better decisions because models are smarter on lower context. So that's another reason you do that. It's also like enabling you to run very long running tasks because of that. Because like instead of being saturated and then compacting and going to shit, etc., it doesn't read all that stuff. And so it's able to kind of like the subagent goes and work for 20 minutes, then comes back. It's just like 1 paragraph back to the main model. And so it can go for hours. Like some people run it for like 3-4 days, sometimes like an orchestrator thread. And so you kind of like are mindful of that too. And so writing 100 subagents like that, it's not the best idea. Although I had workflows that ran up to 150 subagents over the course of, a day or something.
Okay, so if someone wants to think about using subagents in that way for multitasking, what do they need to think about, or how do they do it?
I mean, I gave you a lot of stuff already in the sense of like you need to think of like it's kind of like again finding that balance. Like you want to spawn them for things that are token heavy, but you don't want the same subagents to read the same files, etc. So it's really about instructing the model to say, hey, walk in line when something is not going to eat a lot of token, it doesn't take a lot of reading, whatever. Otherwise, if something is going to be token heavy and it's a repeat workflow, something, you spawn the subagent and here's the model table, pick the right model for the right task.
And again, is that
it's a skill.
Custom. Okay.
It's a skill. Make a skill, and then you can link the skill in your Claude.md if you want it to be more naturally called, basically. And that way it's token efficient in your Claude.md. It's like a one-liner, and then it will just call it and says like, hey, when you start a task, evaluate. Is this something that's going to be a heavy task? In which case, become an orchestrator. Otherwise, just work normally in line. And then that's it.
And then that way it should happen automatically almost every time.
That's how my stuff works, yeah.
Anything else on that, or should we start talking about OpenAI's naming changes and model changes? And
I think
all that good stuff?
we wanted to talk about long-running threads as well and multitasking, etc., which I think is also a thing that people struggle with. And for that, actually, I've created a skill called Clarify, which is inspired by Grill Me by Matt Pocock. So it's like giving credit where it's due, basically. And that skill basically like the model before it dispatches your subagents. I mean, it might send some subagents for exploring and getting context. So it doesn't ask you, it just goes get it. But whenever there's this, it makes basically a decision tree and it decides everything that needs to be decided for the task. And then it asks you all the questions up front. And what that allows is like, you're going to spend like 15, 20 minutes with the agent, kind of answering a bunch of questions and making decisions, because I guarantee you 99% of your prompts do not cover every edge case of everything that's going to be built or whatever you want to do.
So, I mean, a classic example in marketing would be like, hey, write me a social media post about butterflies, right? And then you haven't really specified what you want to say, how you want to say it, what your
Yeah,
angle
like
is, what
what
your
tone do
voice.
you
Like
want? You like
there's a
what's the
lot
goal?
of
What you're
a
doing
lot more
with.
context you could give it, which you often don't. So this is a skill which basically interrogates you to extract
Sure.
that from you.
For this example, not the best because it's such a short thing to do, but for like bigger tasks, like that's the thing. It's like I run this, but then I'm not gonna ask for one article. I'll be like, let's write 50, and then it will like we'll kind of decide a bunch of stuff at once, and I'll just let it run for like sometimes 3-4 hours, and I'll come back, and then all the work will be done. So for example, a good example of real workflow that I do is when we release a new course. Like, we released one recently that was like 20 videos or something. Like, I don't make one prompt per lesson or something like that. I make one prompt for the whole course. And I'm like, you make all the lesson notes, all the thumbnails, all the explainer images, everything. I want to come back to like the course is ready, and I just press publish basically. And we decide a bunch of stuff together. We talk for like 15, 20 minutes. Then it often works for like 2-3 hours. It will upload the video to the host. It will call the image generation. It will upload the thumbnail and then put it on top of the video. It will write the lessons. It will humanize them. It will like clean them up, etc. Do all the editing, upload them. It will make sure the links are here, internally link the lessons if they need to be. Like, a lot of things need to be done. That allows you to run so much more in parallel. And then once you've kind of done all the decisions up front, there's no more interruption. The models are going to keep running for a long, long time. And so it's not difficult to run 6, 7, 8 threads sometimes at the same time. It becomes a bit cognitively difficult,
Yeah.
and it's tiring.
Say
Honestly,
like
I can do 6 hours of this a day, and I'm like, I'm done, But in 6 hours, I get like a week worth of work done, and so that's
it's a
worth it.
really interesting, like, different kind of tiredness. Like, it's just like using your brain too much to get a bit frazzled, is the way I would describe it.
Yeah, and so like it's fine. And then what's very nice as well is the remote control on both Codex and Claude Code now. So you run the task, and quite often I'll go out, I'll go to the gym, whatever. And I just keep an eye, like, every 20 minutes I'll open the app and I just make sure it's not doing something stupid, basically.
Yeah.
But then I don't really have to do too much. I'll just stop it and steer it if it needs, but almost it doesn't need very much. Like, it happens sometimes, but that really allows me to run so many things in parallel. Like, I came back yesterday from holiday, and within 40 minutes, I had 8 threads running, and it was just like, and everything. It's like I'm making new skills, I'm creating content, I'm doing some market research, I'm vibe coding at the same time. And it's like, the one thing I like to do to kind of keep up with this is I maintain a small Kanban board on Notion, and I just write down every task, like every task I want to do. And so whenever I go back to an idle time, like no thread needs me, they're all spinning, and then I'm like, what do I do now? And it's like I open that Notion board, I just pick the next task, and I start a new thread basically. And it's like I basically either attend to a thread that needs me, or create a new task, or verify the work that was done. That's really like
And
the
that's
3
kind of
things I
like
do.
most of your work day these days, would you say?
Yeah. I mean, these are all shooting videos, basically. It's like when I shoot videos, obviously it's not automated. I don't really want to automate that. We could potentially try, but I don't think I don't think it would be like me right now.
Yeah, yeah.
And so I'm not going
You
to do
lose
it.
something when you do
It's
that.
more
Yeah.
about you have more time to do this, to do the videos, to do the content, etc., because everything else can be handled. So yeah, that's kind of like modern work right now. And then your challenge, like I see a lot of people kind of get stuck at like running one thread and looking at it working, and they're like, okay, it's good, but like it's not crazy. It's like you have to kind of force yourself to come up with these workflows and be like, how can I just put more into the same time, basically? And how do I kill
See,
my dead time?
a lot of people, and I'm guilty of this as much as anyone, is like, you start something going and then you just doom scroll social media for like
Yeah.
3 minutes until it comes back to you. And it's like, it's such a waste of time.
Yeah, it's like,
But
it's actually slower than you sometimes for some stuff, and you're just
yeah,
wasting
yeah.
time. It's fine. It's like
But
end of the day, I'm tired. Like end of the day, I'm tired. I'm like, fuck it, I'll just launch a thread
sure,
and I'll do
sure.
that. But
But
like my first 6 hours,
you've
I'm like, fuck no, like
you've got to be good at that context switching, especially if you have, 4 or 5 different threads.
Yeah.
Because like if it's something complex that, especially, it's probably like done something smarter than you can kind of conceptualize in a way. Like it's really hard to keep track of multiple of those at
I
the
think
same
sometimes
time.
you have to let go. It's like that's the point of putting these smarter models in place. Is like sometimes I'm just like I have no idea what's going on, but I'm hoping it's getting close to what I wanted, because I just can't. Like you cannot know everything about everything and every detail. It's the same as like a manager, right? It's like a manager
Yeah,
doesn't
that's a
know
good
every
example.
detail of everything that's going on. You're just kind of like keeping up with the thing, and if you're not sure, you ask a
Are you
question.
are you the type of manager that micromanages everything, or do you have smart people that you trust and you can kind of like check the output?
And that's
Yeah.
when having something like Fable or GPT 5.6 at a high reasoning as the orchestrator is so much better because they're more trustable. Although there are stories of GPT 5.6 deleting some things that it shouldn't. But Fable particularly isn't, like, it has done things I did not agree with or I didn't love,
Hmm.
happened. But it has never done something I was like, fuck, like this shouldn't have happened. Like, never. It's just so reliable. And that's why I'm like, fuck, it's expensive, but maybe I should buy a second account and run everything on Fable. Like my next step of going further is just putting more Fable in charge.
Think that like we have not like gotten over that hump of like especially pay per usage for like a model of
Oh,
that
this
level.
is not
Like,
coming.
but I mean, surely that's going to happen at some point in the future. Like all of the best new models are not always going to be on subscription. Like it's unsustainable for them to do this. Eventually, we're going to be paying per usage, or there'll be some different type of charge mechanism.
Yeah, I mean, you get your subscription, you get a little bit of usage, and then you'll pay extra, something like this. But the truth is, like, it's still cheap. An extra $200 for how much Fable can orchestrate for you is like, it's
Mm.
like, it lifts like 30% of what I need to worry about if I put it in charge instead of like Opus, for example.
Yeah, and that's a huge time saving. So it
Yeah.
would, if we had to pay per use, like it would be worth it, you know? We had this discussion before, like how much money or how much value, not value, but how much cost of tokens are you getting in your subscription each month? And it's
Oh, so much.
thousands,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
What, 3 to 10K, something like that?
But the thing is,
Like
like, I think even if you
but
had to pay for Fable per usage and you had this heavy orchestration in place, you could keep the costs manageable. I mean, I'm still talking like I'd probably spend like a few thousand a month, but not
yeah,
5 figures, you know? And then I would have it manage the subscription models. So I would have it manage the cheaper model. And that's why learning delegation right now is like one of the most important things, because you will be able to extend how much you get done. And I see so many people just kind of like cranking up the reasoning effort and putting the best model for the most stupid tasks.
yeah.
That's not going to fly very much.
And I
Like
think
token
part of the reason for
optimization
that,
is a
part of the
job.
reason for that is because they're not multitasking. You know, they're doing a single thing,
Yeah,
waiting,
but
doing a
then you
single
need an
thing.
even less smart model if you're looking at what it does. The point of Fable is you don't look at it. Like you say, go. I want this, you go and you do it. If you're not doing that, don't use Fable. Like just switch back to Opus and it's fine.
Yeah, but what I was going to say is like there's this kind of aha moment that people have when they start using Claude Code for the first time and like, oh, I can do all these cool things. But then it takes a few months, but then you realize, oh, actually, I'm only using like
Ah,
5% of what of
yep.
the true capabilities of this. And even that seemed amazing at the time, but then you realize there's still a big gap between the people who are really getting a
And
lot
that's
out of
why I
this.
think 90% of people don't see the difference between Fable and Opus. It doesn't change very
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
Like you might get a slightly smarter and something, but that's not the point. The point is Fable is a project manager. It's not a doer anymore. It's not a worker. It's kind of like a decision maker and a project manager that you talk to as yourself, the top level manager, basically. So there's one more layer now.
Let's talk about OpenAI then, because
Okay.
they've made quite a few changes in the last month or so.
Yeah.
Specifically, they have, as we alluded to earlier, they have merged the desktop Codex, or they've renamed the Codex app ChatGPT, and
Mm-hmm.
ChatGPT app is now Legacy or something like that. I don't even think you can download it anymore, which and it's a bit weird because like I deleted it to switch over Codex, and I'm like, oh, where is it? It was quite
A lot of
nice
people
as a kind of
complained.
shortcut Google replacement. So there's that. We've got a new naming mechanism for OpenAI. And remember, this is the company that brought you GPT 4.0 and then O 04 and then O 04 mini,
No,
O
we
04
had
mini high, like all that.
Codex like max or something, like Codex 5.3 high max. So like we had some crazy ones.
It was a shit show. So they've simplified, or they've started to simplify it. They have Sol, which is their top model, Terra, the medium one, equivalent to a kind of sonnet, and then a Luna, which would be like equivalent of like a haiku, roughly. I mean, there's some variance there.
It's the equivalence, but they're not comparable. Like Luna
Yeah.
on X high is comparable to almost Opus in coding, for example.
Yeah,
But
and you've argued for a while that the OpenAI models were already quite a bit better at coding than Opus, not necessarily than Fable, but
not than
than
Fable, no,
Anthropic's
than
Opus.
Opus, yeah.
And that's still the case. Would you say Fable's ahead of Sol?
Yes, a little bit.
Okay.
Like in some benchmarks, Sol will beat it, but it's so close, like it's within margin of error. But in general, the point is that especially if you're not a technical user, like Fable will just kind of like handle it. It's just kind of like it has this roundness of this smartness overall, whereas Sol is like it's smart, but it's more like Opus class level, but it's has an incredible determination to do whatever you ask it to do. It will work for hours. It will keep going and going and going until it works. It doesn't give a shit. Whereas like Fable is more like elegantly figuring it out in a way that you would probably appreciate more, but it costs a lot more money. So my orchestration when I code now usually is like Fable as the orchestrator, calling Sol as the worker and managing Sol for me, basically. And then a lot of my simple work is just inside Codex as well.
So do you want to explain how you do that kind of like cross-platform delegation then?
Yeah.
How does Fable call an OpenAI model?
So
And what tool are you using to do that?
there's no tool. Basically, you probably use Claude Code and ChatGPT in the app, but they have a terminal version, right? It's like you can run Claude Code in the terminal, you can run Codex in the terminal, and the version that you have in the terminal is called the interactive version. That's the one you can type and you see a chatbot, etc. But there is a non-interactive version of these chatbots. Like for example, if you type Claude-P and then you type your prompt in quotes, it will just give you the answer to the prompt, do all the work, but not show anything. And so that's what I'm using inside either Claude Code or Codex is like it's calling this non-interactive version. And so it just writes a prompt. It just says like Codex-P prompt. And then Fable gets the answer. And then it's like it gives it a folder, it gives it a model reasoning level.
And because these are executed on the terminal on your computer and Claude Code or Codex can execute terminal commands,
then they run it like a
that's
chatbot,
what's happening.
Like it's a chatbot for them, right? It's like you give a chatbot to your chatbot. And it's like, and you can tell it, hey, you can edit this folder, work in this folder, do this, etc. Here's the model you should use. Here's the reasoning level. And then it just waits until it's done. It just looks like what it did. That's it.
And that also means that you can use your subscription credits versus having to call like an API to do it. And like
for now, like Anthropic threatened to remove access to this non-interactive version because a lot of people use it for a lot of automation. And so that competes with the API. But they haven't because OpenAI was like, we don't care. You can use it however you want. And so Anthropic didn't want to be left behind. Seems to be a recurring theme between OpenAI and Anthropic. And
I think all of us need to be very thankful. There's like at least a two-horse race because even if you're not using OpenAI at all, the fact that they exist is probably the reason we still have Fable and so many credits for it.
It's one of the reasons I use Codex a lot. Like I had downgraded to $100 and I just maxed it out in 2 days. So it's like I definitely maxed out the weekly limits in 2 days. So I definitely use it a lot, but it's part of why I want to pay them as well. And I'm like, I want to kind of like maintain, even if Fable is like a slightly better model, because they're needed. If they weren't here, you would be paying per token for Fable right now. You would have, they will release Opus 5 probably soon that will compete with 5.6, but you'd have like a shittier models to access to. You would not be able to use the non-interactive version, etc. We need competition because otherwise you're going to be cooked, basically.
Yeah. Okay. And so let's talk a little bit about the merging or the renaming of the Codex app to ChatGPT. So can normal people just not use ChatGPT in the desktop anymore? Or why are they doing this?
So ChatGPT, there's two things. There's basically when you open the app, there's the ChatGPT for work, which they just renamed ChatGPT now. And there is Codex, and you can just choose in a drop down which one you want. A little bit like how in Claude you choose like Code or Home now. They merge co-work with Home. And so the point is you can just chat with it if you want, but it's an agentic experience. So you can, if you go in chat, it's still the ChatGPT, and in work you have the basically Codex without GitHub, which means you can create files, it can connect to your Google Docs, and it will do a bunch of stuff. The one thing that is different for classic ChatGPT users is the agentic version, the work version, has usage limits. Like ChatGPT historically has no usage limit. You can keep chatting forever, basically, unless you really spam it, which is still the case for the normal chat, but not for the work version that will use your Codex usage, basically. And so you have some limits and so on.
One thing I found quite interesting as well is that you can now use both ChatGPT Work and Codex on the free ChatGPT subscription. It's very limited, but I think they're trying to get people to, have a bit of a taste of it, maybe dabble a bit and hopefully get hooked. I mean, I'm sure that's a strategy.
And it works on your phone as well. Like you can use the walk version on your phone, and it's quite good. Like for the apps, like it's done a lot of like hotel stuff for me. For example, I was traveling, I was like, oh, can you email the hotel and ask them to get a double bed, not two single beds or something, whatever. And it's like no problem. It just kind of like connects to your inbox, finds the booking, find the booking number, finds the hotel, email, and then writes the email for them. And then I just kind of like walkie-talkie into my phone, and it just handles these things. And my computer was not on, right? It's like it works in the cloud, actually. So that's kind of nice. And it's, again, a tool that people need to learn to use. I see it more like this OpenClaw competitor. And it also works with your ChatGPT memories as well. So it's like if you have ChatGPT memories, very good. So yeah, highly recommended that people check it out. And the dictation works very well on the app too. So yeah.
Okay. Anything else you want to talk about with OpenAI and their
I think in
repositioning?
general, I think we can talk about usage limits. I think GPT 5.6 Sol uses a lot more usage than 5.5 was. It's like right now, I think usage limits are fairly close between Anthropic and OpenAI, with a bit of an edge on OpenAI still. You still get more usage. And most importantly, for the past 10 days to 12 days, OpenAI has basically been visiting all the limits every other day as an
Why is that?
effort. I mean, it was an effort to gain market share over the model launch, and like, hey, you guys can try it. And even if you're on $20, you can basically get refilled every day. It was a way to put pressure on Anthropic, and it worked because sometimes Anthropic would randomly reset the limits when ChatGPT would reset the limits, just as a way to compete. And I think that was a way to kind of force Anthropic to keep Fable in the subscription too, and essentially bleed their money.
It was nice. The problem is the lack of predictability, I think, caused them a bit of frustration from time to
Yeah,
time.
so actually Codex has these banked resets. Some of the resets they give you, actually, I have them in my sidebar and I can click on it when I want to activate it.
Okay.
So
That's nice.
so it's like I can deplete my weekly limits, and they've also completely removed 5-hour limits. They don't exist right now. It's only weekly
Huh?
limits. So you can basically spam like crazy, launch this delegated task for 3 days, destroy your limits, and then use one of these banked resets to set your limits back to 100% again and do it again, basically. So
I think that's smart from them in a longer term perspective because you can just like burn through it really
yeah.
quickly and then you're out and then you need to like pay per usage after that. If they want to move towards more people doing that, it's not a bad shout.
Yeah. So overall, you still like right now you get more usage out of OpenAI. When they start doing results like crazy, it won't be like insanely more, but it's still more. And one thing I want to say about GPT 5.6 as well is I think it's a good writer. I think the era of like Anthropic models write better is kind of over for me. Um,
Okay.
I think Opus got worse, like, or at least the competitive advantage doesn't feel nearly as big as it was. And
So, but you still think there is one, or
no, I don't think so. I mean, I think that if you ask them write a poem or something like that, you might like Opus better. But GPT 5.6 is so good at following instructions that if you use the right skills and the right writing guidelines, it will just do it. Whereas Opus is very good at taking half of the instructions and shoving them off the window and not doing it.
doing what it thinks is best?
And
Which, if
so,
if you have poor instructions, is a good thing. But if you have very detailed, good
yeah,
instructions, you're quite sophisticated publisher, then
I think
that's a little bit different.
40% of the time I spend building skills for members is fighting against entropic models just not respecting what is
Okay,
already in instructions. So it's
interesting.
like it's very frustrating for me. Whereas with OpenAI, like with the right instructions, it just comes out very nicely. And a lot of like weird taste that it had is gone now. And it's also a faster model than Opus, which is nice. So yeah.
All right. And then in the shadow of all of this, we've also had Kimi K3 and Quen, two Chinese models,
You see that you're a
released.
bit foreign to these words.
Why?
I mean, it's like I feel like you've said it for the first time, But it's fine. It's fine.
Well, I mean, maybe if they hadn't stopped people signing up for it yesterday or the day before,
Yeah.
I could have given it a go. But Kimi K3 has been so popular that they've blocked new signups to it so
Mm-hmm.
they don't go overloaded. Are these just distilled versions of Fable, or what's
Seems to
going
be.
on here?
That's what people say.
Yeah.
Some people are starting to run some correlations on things, and a lot of answers are quite similar. But what's interesting is it's not Fable or 5.6 exactly, but it's very close. And it's going to be an open source model.
Can you
But
quantify that when you say like it's very close? Are we talking like, oh, it's 80% is good, 99% is good? It's
90
like,
to 93%, let's say, something like this.
okay.
Yeah, it will be better than Opus 5, I think. Like, I think when Opus 5 comes out, Kimi K3 will probably still be slightly above or on the line. And it's priced at Sonnet pricing. It's priced at $3 and $15 up, which it's like it's not cheap. Like Chinese models
Can
need
you
to be
get on
cheaper.
subscription?
Well, not right now because they stopped selling
Yeah.
it because they ran out of compute. But when they resume that, which I think they will, yes, you will be able to buy a subscription and be able to. So, for example, I will probably buy a subscription and call it as a subagent inside Claude or Codex, for example. And the reason why is because at some tasks, it's actually better than both Anthropic and OpenAI.
What types of tests?
3D, front-end design, so websites, etc. It makes better looking websites than even Fable. And anything kind of like visual, it's a better model right now. It's more creative, maybe writing. I don't know. I haven't tried it on that. But the point is like, yeah, it's very, very smart. It's like it's close enough to Fable, not exactly, like a little bit down, but close enough. The problem is it's like less polished as a model. So it's like it will have more rough edges. And it's not as token efficient. So it burns a lot of tokens. So tokens are cheaper. So the cost, if you were paying API prices, it would still be cheaper.
Is the
than
API
Fable.
pricing still open, or can you get into
Yeah,
it through
yeah. You can go
OpenRouter
buy
or one of these?
you can go on OpenRouter and use it.
Okay, so we're just talking about the subscription that's blocked at the moment. Okay, and the subscription is what, $100, $200, similar?
I think they have like $40, 100, 200, and like $9 or something. Like it's
Okay.
yeah, it's quite similar. But yeah, it's like it's going to be a model that I will definitely test. And importantly, it's a model that they cannot be banned by the US government or anything like that. And it's interesting because also,
I mean, having said that,
I know, but let me finish on one thing. One thing that you can do with Kimi K3 that you cannot do with the Fables and with GPT 5.6 is security and hacking. It's an open source model that has basically no guardrails. Whereas the reason Fable and 5.6 were banned is because they could do that, so they had to build all these guardrails. And so, in a way, it's also a dangerous model. It could hack your stuff, and it's not going to be as guardrailed. So it's not Fable yet, but one more generation, and then we're going to have models that are strong hackers that have no guardrails.
And I think this is the reason why, according to an article published yesterday, the US government is actually thinking of banning Kimi K3 and other Chinese, specifically Chinese AI models.
Which is
a
very
lot of
stupid.
pushback on that because, like, how are you going to enforce that? I mean, you
it's not only
download the
that.
model.
It's like the hacking can be run from Russia. It's not like the internet is compartmentalized. It's okay. It's banned in US. Fine, let's run it from Mexico and hack the US services anyway. Like, what does it change?
It's like this was a bit different compared to the Fable ban, where like, oh, no one else could use Fable. Okay, but it's kind of the opposite here. It's like, oh, everybody else can use this, but we can't use it ourselves.
Doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, I'm no cybersecurity expert. Like, maybe if you want to protect against something, using it and knowing what it is a good way to do that. So yeah,
we'll see.
Watch this space.
If they control the market, if they control the model and nobody else can use it, sure, that can work. But like, this doesn't work. It's like, I don't see it.
Yeah.
So let's see how it goes. But yeah, it would be funny to see open source model being banned in the US, but not banned everywhere else, to be honest.
Yeah. Okay. I want to talk briefly about Claude Design because it's been a while since we did a podcast, but Claude Design came out several months ago, and it was kind of unusable on the subscription just because of the way tokens were, or not tokens, but usage limits on for design were applied. But that's changed quite significantly, somewhat recently, right? It's basically workable now on a subscription.
So it uses your weekly limits, right? So, and it's not too bad. Like I'm on a 20x plan, so I have lots of limits. They've also released the V2 of their stuff, so they actually have like basically a full page builder in there, and you can drag and drop stuff. Like it's a bit better, and it's a good tool. Like if you're a marketer, like honestly, making presentations, making landing pages, making slideshows, making like anything that's visual, it's kind of worth building your design system into it because it works that way. You build your design system. It's even better if you have the code base for your website. It will just go and grab it for you, and then you just say, "Hey, I want a presentation," and everything looks like your website basically. So I think it's a tool that's not talked about that much considering how useful it is. Feels a little bit kind of like old school in the sense that you get back to like a graphic interface and so on, whereas now we're very used to these kind of chatbots only. But it's the right middle where you can click and edit text, for example, without asking the chatbot, while at the same time you can pull Fable and have it do like a full overhaul or CRO optimization or whatever you want on a page. It's pretty good.
And then final topic for today, I want to talk about how companies are integrating AI into their software, because there's a bit of a spectrum here in terms of what's happening. There's been a video kind of going around this week of a guy called Fred Turner who runs a company called Curative. And he was on a podcast recently talking about how they canceled a $600,000 per year Salesforce contract because they basically vibe coded their own CRM. Now, we've got two approaches here, how companies are trying to deal with AI. On the one hand, we've got companies that are trying to build like an AI interface inside their tool. So Ahrefs a good example. They released Agent A, it's called. So you have to pay, subscribe, log in, and then you can use this agent. On the other end of the spectrum, we've got Buffer, the social media scheduling company, who they've announced a change of strategy now. So instead of logging in and using the AI functionality there, they want to integrate their capabilities into your existing AI stack. So think Claude Code or Codex. What are you seeing winning at the moment in terms of these different approaches?
I mean, I'm not an expert in SaaS, so I'm not going to tell you like for sure that's what's going to win, but I think it's so hard to compete with your own chatbot inside your product because when you build that, you pay API prices, right? You have to pay Anthropic. Like if you use Sonnet, you have to pay $3 and $15 out. Or like it's discounted now, so a bit less. But or like OpenAI, it's GPT 5.6 is $30 per million token out. It's expensive. And then you're competing essentially with people's subscriptions where they have like thousands of dollars for $100, $200. And most people now have some kind of AI subscription for work. Like even if that's a $20 subscription, they have some. So they're used to use these high quality models because it doesn't cost them very much. And so if you build it in your bot, like you could end up spending a lot of money per customer if you serve the tokens yourself. Whereas if you build it inside their own workspace, then they get to use the best models for almost no money. It saves you a lot of money. The downside is you kind of lose brand equity in the sense that people don't log on your website, they don't see your stuff, etc. You're kind of becoming almost like a background actor of their business.
An API.
Yeah. And so I think like people are probably more likely to switch or whatever if there's a cheaper one. There's probably a brand play here that's quite important. But the reality is also context, right? So like we have these folders with all our context, all our stuff, etc. If I wanted to build that, like, the Ahrefs bot doesn't have all that context and all my stuff. Has the Ahrefs data, great, but it doesn't know our writing guidelines. It doesn't know our pricing and offers and everything. It could go on the website potentially and do some, but it's duplicate basically. You end up maintaining
it feels
some
like
stuff
it's
on
easier.
Ahrefs.
It feels like it's easier to bring in the capabilities of the software into your Claude Code, for example, rather than the other way around.
As a user, it's so much better. The thing is, like, I don't think the market's that big yet of people who are really like into these setups, but I would not be surprised if this is going to be dominant a year or two from now when this becomes more mainstream. Like all the co-work stuff, etc., is kind of like taking off, and that's working. And so, yeah, I think it's like, I don't know. I hate chatbots in software products. Like, I don't want to buy a tool anymore where I have to log in. I don't want to log in anymore. Yeah. It's like it has to be operatable by the chatbot, and the chatbot operates through this. Otherwise, I don't buy it. I am definitely not the mainstream market. Yeah.
Gives you a sense of where things are going with that, though, because, it's hard to imagine in 2-3 years' time, like interfaces for software tools being like, the big draw. It's more like the capabilities and how well it integrates with your AI.
Yeah. And it's like, honestly, most software doesn't have mind-boggling interface. I would say our Ahrefs is probably one of the better ones, to be honest. Like they do a good job at displaying the data. But the truth is, I don't want to read that data. I want just to know what that means. And like, I am not the SEO worker anymore. I am not here to read the fucking lines of each backlink and everything. AI is supposed to do that and tell me, hey, this competitor has 100 more backlinks and they come mostly from guest posting sites. And then I'm like, great, get more guest posts. And then it should just go and figure it out, right? That's kind of like the level at which I'm sitting. And so therefore, this data is not very useful to me anymore. because it can be processed better by a smart model, basically. Yeah, there's 0 point spending all these hours doing this anymore. It's like, and maybe I'm a bit ahead of the market on this, so fine. But, as Haiku becomes as smart as Fable by next year, probably, it's going to make sense for a lot of people.
Okay. Any final words of wisdom, Gael?
Yeah, work on your delegation stuff. Like, it's quite important. You'll get a lot more out of your AI subscription. You'll be able to drive more stuff with the best models, which in turn allows you to run longer projects, like longer running threads, allows you to multitask more, etc. And that's kind of like the next level, right? A lot of people now, they have their Claude Code or Cowork connected to their tools. They have a little folder that they work in with some data about their business. But like, how do you get 5 times more done than that? And then it's really about giving the reins to the AI, still collaborating. Like, it's almost like you have the meeting, the project kickoff meeting a bit, and then it's like, you go, and I don't want to know what you're doing. You just come back to me when you're done. That's the next level. It involves also connecting your phone. And it's like, because some of these threads run for hours, you cannot just sit at your computer. And yeah, I encourage people to kind of try to explore that, because that's the next frontier. And these new generations of models, Soul and Fable, they are made for that. Like, that's the new thing. If you don't do that, then you don't use them as they're intended to.
And if you're not currently using Claude Code or Codex in your business, first, what are you doing? But second, you can go to authorityhacker.com/AI accelerator, join our program. We have a complete course in there that gets you up to speed. But once you've been through that course, it's not just, oh, let's use this and we don't need anything else. Like, you need to keep pushing. There are levels to this. So the delegate skill, which plugin, which Gael mentioned, is available inside the AI Accelerator as well. And there's a ton of other useful courses, resources, skills, plugins, etc., which we're releasing new stuff every week, like multiple times a week at this point. Yep. So if you don't want to be left behind with that stuff and want to, squeeze as much juice out of this as possible, then please head over to authorityhacker.com/AI accelerator, and we'd love to see you inside the program. We'll wrap it up there. Thanks everyone for watching on YouTube. We usually release new episodes every week. We're definitely releasing one next week, so make sure you subscribe so you don't miss that one. And if you have any questions, comments, thoughts about model usage and anything we talked about here, please post a comment on the YouTube video. We do our best to answer all of those as they come in. So we'll see you next week.